application to observe and listen contemporaneously to this meeting, which we authorize pursuant to the governor's emergency order. However, in accordance with the emergency order, I am confirming that we are A, providing public access to the meeting by telephone with additional access possibilities by video or other electronic means. We are tonight using Zoom for this electronic meeting. And the meeting ID is 910-2723-2982. All members of the board have the ability to communicate contemporaneously during this meeting through this platform. And the public has access to contemporaneously listen and, if necessary, participate in this meeting through dialing the following number: 1-646-558-8656. When asked for the password, the meeting ID again is 910-2723-2982. Or you can click the following website address, which is https://support.zoom.us.hc/en-us, followed by the ID 910-2723-2982. We have provided public notice of the necessary information for accessing the meeting. We previously gave notice to the public of the necessary information for accessing the meeting, including how to access the meeting using Zoom or telephonically. Instructions have also been provided on the website of the board at https://www.newmarketnh.gov/planning board. Providing a mechanism for the public to alert the public body during the meeting if there are problems with access. If anyone has a problem from the public, please call 603-659-3617, extension 1321, or email channel13@newmarketnh.gov. Again, that number is 603-659-3617, extension 1321. We'll be adjourning the meeting if the public is made unable to access this meeting. In the event the public is unable to access the meeting will be adjourned and rescheduled. Please note that all votes are taken during this meeting shall be done by roll call vote. Let's start the meeting by taking a roll call attendance. I would like each member to state their presence, and please state whether or not there's anyone in the room with you during this meeting, which is required under the right to know law. Again, I'm Valerie Shelton. I'll be chairing the meeting, and there's no one present in this room with me. Bill? Bill, you need to unmute.
Bill Doucette, nobody in the room.
Christian?
I am present and alone.
Please state your name.
Christian Matthews, present and alone.
Thank you. Mikal?
Because already present and alone.
Jamie?
I'm Jamie Bruton, present and alone.
Sarah?
I'm Sarah French. I'm present and alone.
Ted?
I'm Ted Seeley, present and alone.
And also with us this evening is Town Planner Diane Hardy.
Present and alone.
Thank you. And Walter Cheney, who is here with us, and Timothy Kremen, our Channel 13 guru. Okay, with that out of the way, I'll go to the agenda. And the first item on our planning board meeting of Tuesday, July 14th, 2020 is the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone stand and say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with justice for all.
And justice for all.
Okay. Can the board still hear me?
Yes,
I can hear you fine.
Okay, next order is public comments. I don't see any members of the public other than Mr. Cheney in the meeting. So I'll close public comments. Next is review and approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make the motion that we approve the minutes as submitted.
That's June 19th, 2020.
Correct.
I'll second it.
Second by Jamie Bruton. Motion by Bill Doucette. Any discussion on the minutes? Hearing none, I'll take a roll call vote. Bill Doucette,
Aye.
Christian Matthews.
Aye.
Mikal,
Abstained, I wasn't there last time.
okay, Jamie,
Aye.
Sarah,
aye.
Ted,
Aye.
and Val Shelton votes aye. Okay. Next order of business. Mr. Cheney has come before us with a request for an extension to 56 Exeter Road, tax map U4, lot 12, in the M2A zone. Mr. Cheney, you have the floor.
Hey, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yep.
Yeah, as we all know, it's been a little bit of a trying time to get this project off the ground. And as of late, due to the fact that we have not been able to either get financing or a buyer, I started down a new path and trying to acquire some of the adjacent land, which, you know, in January of this past year, we finally got the transfer of the town lot that's over by the railroad tracks there. And after finding out the lot was substantially smaller than probably we all thought, and that really didn't help, I reached out to the, oh, Jesus. What
We
happened?
got you, Walter.
You got me.
Keep going.
My screen went blank.
We still have you.
So, you know, I reached out to the railroad company. We were able to work on an agreement to purchase, of which we finally closed not very long ago. And that's allowed me to try to address some of the issues that either the banks or the buyers or even, you know, I myself in trying to get this project off the ground to work. And so we're hoping that all of this will be for naught and that the time spent to try to continue to make this project viable is going to be worth it. So, you know, like anything, time goes by so fast and I can't even believe how much time has gone by. So I was just trying to come before you to look at trying to extend the whatever it's called. I'm having a brain fart, but
The 6-month period for the period that the planning board approved for meeting the conditions of approval.
correct. So I'm looking to try to bang that out to like 2024, since we're already in 2020, and the way time goes by and how long it's taken for anything to get accomplished, especially with all that's going on, before we know it, 2024 will be here. So that's why I'm before you, in hopes that we can get somewhere where it'll be a viable project.
Oh, just a couple questions. Walter, when does your current extension expire?
Well, I think not long ago, like within the last 2 weeks, I think I determined that was actually expired in January.
Okay,
Because I look back at the original approval and I think it was in January. Then I came for an extension in June of 2017. So bottom line is, I think that they have expired as of January of 2020. And
Diane, okay, and Diane, were you able to find anything on that?
I wasn't able to, I didn't have enough time before
Okay.
the meeting to do, but right now, as you know, we're under the governor's order that suspends timeframes for planning boards. So the fact that it's expired at this point, I don't think is an issue.
Yeah.
And also, as we did, I think it was the last meeting or the meeting before, we went ahead and extended it for another 6, in that particular case, it was for another 6 months beyond that date. Although I understand Mr. Feeney is looking for, is it true, a 4-year extension, Walter?
it'll be a 4-year extension.
So, Walter, can you bring up the, the board up to speed as to what things that you have done since the approval, that were actually part of the conditions of approval? I mean, we certainly know the buildings have been removed.
Right. I mean, I really haven't done anything on the site other than removing the buildings, trying to clean it up, and then try to fix or figure out how to better position the property to actually get built. So outside of that, I haven't focused on any of the conditions of approvals because it's been kind of a albatross for me.
Now, with the new acquisition of additional land, do you anticipate that you would be looking to revise the current plan that has been approved, the site plan that was approved?
Yes, so we're still working on it right now, but we should have all of the information in for you guys so that we can be coming in front of you in August. Yeah, for the next August meeting here on the 11th, I think. For a consultation on the direction I'm trying to go, which is going to address most of either the bank or the buyer issues.
So are you anticipating an entirely new site plan or an amendment to the existing approval?
It's going to be an amendment to the existing, really, other than adding parking, better laying out, trash and those kind of things. And more importantly, the bigger problem with this project's been, everybody feels there's never been enough residential to carry the commercial. So we're going to be looking to try to increase some of the residential in some way. And we're still tweaking that to make that all work based on what we've been able to acquire between the railroad and the town lot.
Do any of the other members have questions for Mr. Cheney? Bill?
I have to sit out on this one.
Okay. Christian?
Yeah, I guess, could we just clarify the timeline on this? So it expired in January 2020, which was before the governor's order went into effect, but sometime.
No, I'm sorry. I believe it was July or June, sorry.
Yep.
And I can verify that.
Yeah, I think we're good on the issue that because even though it's expired because of the current governor's order, that we have the authority to grant an additional extension.
Okay.
If someone has an issue with that, I'm sure they'll be calling Diane, but I think as a board, we have the ability to render what our position would be on it this evening. Also, McAllen, Ted, I'm going to, as alternates, I didn't bring you on, right, as full members. So both Ted and McCall, you'll be voting on anything tonight.
Okay. No, I don't have any comments in regards specifically to the extension.
Sarah?
No, no questions from me.
Jamie?
Is it possible to do a quick review of what the conditions were on the original approval?
Good question.
Having not been part of it before, if the request for extension is on the old conditions, is there a quick summary of what those were?
Walter?
I mean, this was like 4 years ago, and I do not have files here at home. So we would have to research that for the next meeting if you'd like me to.
Walter, can you comment on that, please?
I don't have that in front of me. I was not expecting that question, so I am not going to be able to help at this time, but it would be easy enough to get it to everybody.
Mikal, did you have any questions for Mr. Genie? Okay. So Walter, I guess my only comment is, given that the plan is to come back with us with an amendment to the existing approval,
Yep.
wouldn't it be more fair to say that if we granted you like a 6 month or 1 year extension on the existing approval, that would give you adequate time to come before us with the new plan? And then at that point in time, that plan would have the statutory time period for approvals.
Absolutely. And, the lion's share of why I'm doing this tonight, knowing that I'm going to be in front of you next month, is being totally unsure of how this is working and the trouble trying to get it all fired up. So I don't disagree that, we could address most of this a little bit further down, but I wanted to try the process, see how this was going to work so that it will be as smooth as possible as we move forward.
So I would be open, to a 6 month or a 1 year extension on the current approved site plan. Anyone have any comments about that?
I agree with you. I'm okay with a shorter time frame. I'm not in a position to comment on something that would last 4 years or 5 years
Would
without
anyone,
further review.
so would anyone like to make a motion to grant a 12-month extension?
Sure. Motion to extend, what is the exact term?
56 Exeter Road, tax map U4, lot 12, M2A zone, redevelopment of that site.
Perfect. So motion to extend the redevelopment of 56 Exeter Road, tax map U4, lot 12, M2A zone for a period of 12 months.
So a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ted. It was Ted Seeley on the second, Christian Matthews on the first, or made the motion. Any further discussion on the motion?
I will, when Walter comes back for his revisions of his plan, I will be sure that the board has a copy of the old plan and also has a copy of the conditions of approval that were originally stated by the planning board. From what I recall, they're pretty much standard conditions, having a developer's agreement, that sort of thing. So I don't think there's anything really unusual in that, in those conditions.
That would be great, Diane. Thank you. Okay, hearing no further discussion amongst the board, I'll call the motion for vote. Bill, you've recused yourself. Christian?
Okay.
Aye.
Mikal?
Aye.
Ted?
Aye.
Sarah?
Aye.
Jamie?
Aye.
And myself, Val Shelton, vote in favor. So Walter, you've got a 12-month extension on the existing site plan, and we look forward to the revisions, proposed revisions you'll be bringing forth, so something can get going down there for everybody.
Great. Thank you very much for everybody's time.
Thanks for joining this technology. Next order of business, 77 Hershey Lane LLC. There's a request for a continuation on the application by Walter Cheney Sr. and Chinburg Builders for tax map R4 lot 3 in R2 zone open space subdivision. Everybody should have gotten the updated wetlands communications that Diana's been sending us. So I think we'd like to grant this continuance so that the parties have time to provide comments, and that the TRC, more importantly, has time to meet with the applicant again and our technical people before this application gets before the board at the August meeting. So do I have a motion?
So moved.
Motion made by Jamie Bruton. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Christian Matthews. Any further discussion on the request for continuation? Okay, I'll call the vote. Bill Doucette,
Abstain.
Christian,
Aye.
Michael,
Aye.
Ted,
Aye.
Sarah,
Aye.
Jamie.
Aye.
I vote in favor. Motion passes unanimously. Under new old business, discussion of permitted uses. Christian asked us to kind of bring this to the board at this meeting, which was a discussion of the current permitted uses. And Christian, do you want to lead us off on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So my printed documents finally came in handy. So I went through, but I don't know if we would just want to have kind of an open discussion, maybe bring up an idea, talk about it, or if we all kind of want to share all our ideas. What are we thinking here for how to have this discussion?
I think where we left the last meeting, it was if people could take or if people could review the table of permitted uses in the current zones. I think that's where we had wanted to kind of have a start of a discussion on the permitted uses. And were you specifically just dealing with residential uses in the various zones? I'm sorry, Christian, that was kind of a question.
I mean, I don't think we put limits on it, but yeah, I don't know if anyone looked at anything other than just residential and zones. So I'll just toss out some ideas. You know, it's something I've brought up before. Maybe some of you have heard about it. So in our R2 zone, I don't know, probably be easier if I shared a screen, but.
The RQ zone, I'm sorry.
Yeah, the
R2?
R2.
R2, okay, thank you.
Sorry, R2.
Sorry.
So this is, you know, the area that's kind of outside core downtown. You know, something that I've always thought is duplex residential and multifamily residential in that zone. You know, when you look at the distance from downtown and sidewalk networks apparent, it seems to me that that's a pretty good spot to have redevelopment and try to densify neighborhoods. So that's one idea. And if it'd be easier, I can pull up the zoning map if anyone doesn't have
That'd
it.
be a
or-
great idea.
Val, I think you just need to make me, let me share my screen. Maybe you need to make me a co-host.
While you're pulling that up, Christian, Dan, just a question. When was the last master plan update?
We, as you know, Ted, we don't have the resources to do a comprehensive update every 5 or 10 years as is recommended. So what we do is we update one chapter at a time. And we took up the housing and demographics section not that long ago. It was in 2015. We went through an extensive process. We had some assistance from the Stratford Regional Planning Commission. So that's one that's not as outdated as some of the other chapters. We have a couple of chapters such as historic resources that hasn't been updated since 2001. So, you know, we do what we can given the resources we have, and every year, you know, the planning board is asked what chapter is most relevant and would we like to pursue. Right now, as you know, we're working on the water resource plan, and Kyle Pimentel is going to be coming forward, hopefully at the next meeting, to give us an overview of that. But that's basically how the process has worked since I've been here. And there is a flow chart or a spreadsheet that we put together that shows when various chapters have been updated, and we always have a discussion at the beginning of every year as to which ones we want to pursue.
You share now, Christian?
No, I think I'm still waiting. I don't know. If you,
So I'm set to share, to have all participants sharing simultaneously.
okay, now it goes. Sorry. Okay, perfect. Can you all see the zoning map?
Yes.
Okay, cool. Yeah, so the R2 is this yellow color. M1, you know, this is Mills right here. So basically it's this area just outside of like kind of downtown proper. Sidewalk network's pretty much all along 152 here.
So
Go ahead, Bill.
in the R2 zone, you're talking about whether or not, so what is allowed there now for, you said duplex multifamily, so is multifamily no longer allowed in that zone?
Only single family is allowed.
Am I misreading this? Bennett Way is in the R2?
Yeah, pretty much most of R2 are non-conforming uses under current residential zoning.
And it looks like Hershey Lane.
Well, I think the Bennett Way portion, this is R3 where the apartments end. So then the single family comes right after it. And the R3 does allow duplex and multifamily.
So then when you go up past Bennett Way and turn right into where the condominiums are.
Right.
Yep. And I think those are all single family condos.
No,
No?
that's
Not
all
all of
high
them.
density Sewell Farms.
We have, and a lot of those were built before the current zoning was in effect. So in fact, they are grandfathered, and that includes the Durrell Woods development, which does include some townhouses and multifamily housing.
Right.
But those were all built prior to 1996, which is when the town, I understand, changed the zoning because of the phenomenal growth that was experienced in that portion of the town.
So Christian, in the past, I've heard the suggestion that the town of Newmarket has its proportionate share of multifamily already. I don't know if that has changed, you know, in the past 15 years to maybe that now we're at the point where we're actually behind on that.
Yeah, like the residential needs survey that Stratford publishes.
Yes.
Right. And they actually did do that analysis as part of the update in 2015. We looked at the balance of housing types in the community.
And do you recall, just in broad strokes, whether their finding 5 years ago was that we were consistent on, I mean, should we use the word affordable housing? Or are we lagging in that?
No, I think that the feeling of the board at that time, and Val, you can chime in if you would like, was that we have a really great balance of housing types in the community. And Newmarket had traditionally had more than its fair share of multifamily and rental housing in respect to some of the more rural communities surrounding us, and that we have more than 50% of our housing stock is multifamily housing, and over 50% of our housing stock is rental. And the demographic housing report that the Planning Commission documented that. And we did have extensive discussions with the planning board at the time. And there was a feeling that we didn't really want to increase the density in those areas because of the widespread implications that would have in terms of changing the neighborhood the character of neighborhoods, and also that it was really contrary to how the town at that time wanted to grow. And of course, these discussions are always subject to change as time goes on. But I think there was several planning board members at the time who were very adamant that we really don't want to increase the density in Newmarket because we have really done a great job in maintaining a reasonable balance. And we're not like other communities that haven't done their fair share in terms of providing housing opportunities for low and moderate income families and for workforce housing.
So I'm going to jump in on this. The issue at the time, and it was more at the town council than it was at the planning board, was the multifamily housing vis-a-vis single family, and the burden on services and the school system as a cause and effect of multifamily, and feeling that we had a disproportionate amount of multifamily housing in the community than other neighboring towns. And that could very much have been true at the time. And you have to understand that multi-family housing is also including all of the condominium units. Moody Point, where I live, I'm in a single family home, but we have multi-family housing here. The Sewell Farms condominiums, that's all multifamily. Those are all condos, but they're considered multifamilies. So multifamily is not just apartment buildings. We were able to get the council on board with the rezoning into the M2A zone, which would allow more density there by doing mixed use within that zone. And the thought that, and we wanted to expand that up on the north corridor, and that didn't get approved. So the North Gateway, which is now, I can't see, I think it's just M2.
Yes.
B1, sorry, we wanted to convert B1 over to M2A as well, to facilitate basically urban infill. That didn't go anywhere. But if you look at this zoning map, which is a good way to look at zoning, particularly for housing, the M1 is the highest density. M2A, we've brought in additional housing density in combination with, with mixed uses. And then you go in those districts. So what's allowed is obviously single families, multifamily, and duplexes. Then you go jump out to the R2, and now you're down to single families. R3 are single families in duplexes.
Multifamily also.
In
R3.
R3. And then you get to, all of a sudden you're at R1, which is just single family. So you have R2 and R1 as far as residential uses, I believe, are the same. Is that correct, Diane? That only single
Yes.
families are allowed. So you have, so the difference between R2 and R1 is really just permitted uses such as, an adult daycare in one, but not in the other. It's not the for housing, single families, multifamilies, duplexes.
I also wanted, if I could mention, there was a lot of interest in 2015 in infill development. And what I'm talking about is not the R2 and the R1 zones, but the other areas that are within what we call the urban core. And there was a feeling that we should be allowing higher density. And we have actually approved several projects, including Walt Cheney's project that just came in tonight. That was for 10 units, and they were small apartments, from what I understand, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments. That's in the R2 zone, I believe. I'm sorry,
No, that's the M2A.
The M2A, I'm sorry, forgive me. Also, we had some duplexes built over on Nichols Avenue. That was a project that originally we were looking at for multifamily housing. Bill Doucette probably remembers that when it first came in. It was, and we actually approved it for duplexes, and there are a couple of duplexes there. And over the years, the town has, through the zoning Board of Adjustment, has approved several duplexes. We just approved one a couple of weeks ago out on Wadley Falls Road for a duplex. And of course, the one that's close to the town hall within walking distance of the downtown, there are 4 units that were approved there. So I think that we have provided quite a bit of opportunity in the town for a variety of housing types. And of course, we can't forget Eric DeWitt, who came into the planning board and is actually putting some micro apartments in a mixed-use development within the M2A zoning district, which, you know, we've been working on, and that's actually coming to fruition. He got his developer's agreement signed and approved, and he is working on his financing and is moving forward with that. So and the Selectwood property is another one that comes to mind, which is 15 units of, originally it was going to be low-income housing, and they were looking to the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority for some low-income housing tax credits, but they couldn't get the figures to work due to market conditions. So they are still going ahead with the project. It's for 15 units. That's the last piece, remaining piece of our mill district that needs to be redeveloped. And that's a project that will be providing not assisted housing or low-income housing at this point, but market rate housing, which will really help to boost and be consistent with the character of the mill district as we now know it. And of course, there's the Grape Street project that we approved, which is a 4-unit townhouse project, which provides housing opportunities in New Village, which are within walking distance. So I guess I want to just dispel this notion that Newmarket isn't doing its fair share. We're not taking affordable or workforce housing seriously. We have done more than many communities in the state of New Hampshire. And I feel very strongly that we have a balanced housing stock, and we should be looking very carefully at anything that's going to increase density, especially in that area that you're referring to, because there is some very challenged, if you will, environmentally challenged lands. And of course, this development that's before us now, where there are very steep slopes and there are wetlands. So, you know, we need to be very cautious about increasing density in those areas and what that is going to do in terms of changing the character of the community, that I think we are all very, very happy and willing to protect from indiscriminate development and high density development.
So I think just going back to the B1, if we're really looking for the, you know, I think the discussion is there's going to be growth in Newmarket. Where do we want as a board to, for good planning, have that growth occur? And I think that given the projects going on with the gateways, revisiting that north, you know, B1 zone on, you know, going towards Durham, when we did the analysis on there was a vast majority of those homes. I don't have the report right in front of me, but more of the properties than not in that zone are non-conforming. They're not businesses. They're duplexes, apartments, you know, in homes. There's very few businesses there, even though that's what it was zoned. And again, I think that if we're looking for the expansion of the downtown into other areas for housing density, that would be one to look at. And most of the research was done when we did that whole M2A project several years ago. And it would fit in with the Gateway District for what they're looking to do there.
I think
that as a board, from going through the last housing update on the master plan, we really didn't want to see more high density out in the R1 zones. I don't think anyone was talking about that unless it was over really what would we do with B3? You know, out on 152 with doing, you know, a CCRC, that would obviously be higher density.
I think, Diane, has Steve shared anything with you about the proposed changes for B1 and the North Gateway? I know that he's mentioned possibly some changes he would bring forth.
We've been working on a gateway concept for a couple of years, and we have a consultant, Stu Arnett, who's under contract. And as a matter of fact, everything was put on hold, you know, because of the pandemic. But actually, I have a copy of his draft report, and they are recommending some zoning changes up in that area, and also recommending that the town move forward with some grant applications, because there's money available through groups like Plan New Hampshire, and to help you know, communities who are interested in reworking some of their zoning. But I guess, you know, my feeling is any proposal to increase density has to be carefully looked at in terms of the buildability of land, in terms of what the visual impact is going to be, and, you know, how is that something that would change the character of the community. I'm looking at the M2 zone right now, I mean the R2 zone right now, and most of that land and the land that hasn't been built on is open space. Because there have Durrell Woods, which I think is the development you live in, Christian, you know, that has several acres of open space and conservation land that was set aside as part of the zoning of that land back in the mid 80s. So there really isn't much land left. So I would say that before we think about doing any density changes, that we do a build out analysis and see what it translates into in terms of additional housing units. And, you know, we need to have some policy discussions, not only at the planning board level, but also engage the public in that process to see how the public feels that we should be growing. And if this is, you know, that's an appropriate model that the town should pursue in the future.
Christian?
Yeah, so I think the way that I look at the housing needs assessment is that's a bare minimum. You know, if you're meeting the minimum of what Stratford is suggesting, that's good for you. But I think we should always be striving to achieve higher. You look across the state, I think we have like less than a 1% vacancy rate. So that means we do still have issues. You know, if you talk to younger people, older people, we do have affordability issues here in Newmarket. So to talk about, you know, 4 units here, 8 units there, that's great. I love it. But to take, you know, probably 70-75% of our town and say you can only build a single family unit, well, that means you're stuck with a certain level of housing. You know, affordable housing can result from smaller sizes, smaller footprints, duplexes, and multifamily. Specifically, I've mentioned the R2 a number of times because there's water, there's sewer, there's already roads there. So we're not taking on new liabilities for public infrastructure. And we can allow conversions. We don't need to build on conservation land. We don't need to take out huge swaths of acres in the western parts of town. So the R2 to me makes so much sense. The B1 makes so much sense, but the R2 specifically because you are protecting character. By taking a single family home and converting it to a duplex, you're not changing the outer structure. Also, character of homes built in 2000. Now, there's not that much character. They all kind of look the exact same at this point. Character downtown, absolutely. But to not focus on, you know, probably a 10% area that would be the next steps in development, I think is a mistake.
Bill, any comments?
I think it's wonderful as a planning board. I think we should have these types of discussions. I think we're called planning board instead of regulatory board for a reason. I know very little about it, but I understand that there's a proposal before the city of Dover right now for a different format of affordable housing. It is a very small footprint, single family, detached. It's not a mini house or a micro house, but it's small. So if you think about what is at Rockingham Country Club right now, I'm guessing those are somewhere between 1,800 and 2,500 square feet. They're looking at less than that. And like I said, I know very little about it other than that the city's very excited that there's a potential to have a development in their community where the people that work in the community may be able to buy and own.
Okay. Mikal? Mikal, any comments?
I think it's a great idea. I think it would be worth looking into build out analysis of the town and see where we are, because obviously priorities are changing. So from my perspective, I think it would make sense. I'm all about infill development. I'm all about increasing densities. So for me, making the town more walkable and less automobile dependent is something that I would wish for Newmarket. So if we can do something about it, I would be all for it.
Okay, thank you. Jamie, comments?
I'm definitely liking the idea of focusing on continuing the gateway conversations. And I think generally from what I've seen over the years, we've pretty much been open to a lot of what's been brought to the town. So like what we have isn't necessarily even set, and hopefully people that are having new ideas that see something different don't stop and not ask because of how it's set up now. I would love to have another look at the zoning map when in the R2, where I don't have a good visual of which one of these are the open spaces. I'd love to have a recolorization of the ones that, or the space that we've determined is not to be built out, and look at it again.
Okay.
And no, they all seem like good ideas to me right now.
Thank you. Sarah?
I don't have any comments.
Okay. Ted?
Yeah, I think I certainly, Christian, coming from the affordable housing world, I certainly agree, regarding the affordable issue. As a recent homeowner, and my parents moved here, and they live in Newmarket Mills. My other thought is, just from a practical standpoint, is a resource issue. And, just thinking about where would an initiative like this fall into our priorities? And I'm more so just asking the question and thinking, wondering about it and thinking about it. Like, in terms of, Diane, you mentioned, the completion of the update for the water resource plan. I'd be interested sort of what's next up on that list. What's sort of the priority that, the planning board and the council has been thinking about, and then, maybe working backwards from that and figuring out where in something like this would work, how we could sort of fit that in. But I do think it will take a lot of resources. I mean, town input, build out analysis, market study, a lot of resources that are spread thin right now. So we have to be careful what we choose.
Okay, thank you. So there's kind of a mixed consensus here. if you can have a mixed consensus, where it's like a divided board on going forward. I think one thing we might want to think about is, let's take a look at the recommendation for action items under the last housing chapter of the master plan update, and see if there are some action items there that I think might go to your point, Ted, that we just, haven't prioritized, but that, we had, those should be living documents, so maybe we could review that. I think we certainly, in conjunction with the town council and the consultant that's been hired by the town, take another look at that B1 zone on the northern corridor. There's already been an awful lot of build out analysis done there. So I think we could look at that. And we know that we have, even though we haven't seen them come to, fruition, there have been developers coming forward on the M2A zone with plans, two that Diane just spoke of. So can we direct where growth in the town will be? So I think that if we revisit that housing chapter, I think we may not be reinventing the wheel. Maybe some of that time within resources already been spent, and it's just a matter of that it hasn't been implemented. So I think maybe, I know, Diane, you could probably actually, I know we have the access to the mapping, that we could do the overlays of the open space and conservation lands and by various districts. We've looked, because we looked at that before. So that might be something that we could get out. I think Jamie wanted to look at that, and that might be helpful to Christian.
The water resource plan is going to be presented for final draft in August. So, we usually have these discussions once a year, and many times in concert with the town council. We have a joint meeting usually in the fall. This year it didn't happen until, it was late in November, if I recall correctly. But we're looking at next year for a possible project, and maybe this is the time to revisit that chapter. The other thing we didn't talk about that was discussed at great lengths when we did the housing update was accessible apartments, and we've had a lot of interest from people in the idea of maybe making it less stringent and allowing ADUs, if you will, in separate structures on individual lots. At the time that we did the last master plan update on housing, there was a very strong feeling that we didn't want to allow that. And so when we did do an update, I don't know what year it was, 2017, we didn't deviate from what our previous plan was. Of course, under the state law, we have the option of having it in detached or attached units, and we decided with the attached variety. But there are some areas in town where maybe it's appropriate, in the rural areas where you don't have a high density and you can tuck away a unit and nobody even knows it's there. So I think I'd be willing to look at the accessory dwelling unit concept and maybe identify some areas in the rural part of the town, our one town section of town, where that type of use would be appropriate.
That's an interesting concept. I think we'd have to see if we can legally limit where a detached accessory unit would be. So that'd be a good legal question.
Pretty sure we can do that, Val. I don't think that's a problem.
Okay, so I think we want to continue this discussion and certainly include the council on the discussion when we meet with them jointly. So, and hopefully we'll have an update on the gateway end, because that's definitely going to be leading into more of a high density rezoning of that area for residential in order to get any projects going forward.
I do want to mention that I spoke with a developer last week who's interested in doing a workforce housing project in Newmarket. As you probably know, the Willie House has been sold, and he's interested in moving some of the tenants from that location to a new facility, and they're looking at the railroad yard off of Railroad Depot Street, Railroad Street, and that whole complex where New England Barricade is located, and they're talking about developing 25 units of workforce housing. And they've been in touch with your colleagues, Ted, at the New Hampshire Housing Finance Authority about the possibility of doing a project. So we do have
Yeah, I've already
interest
been talking
in.
about it.
Oh, you
Although
know
I
about
have
that?
to excuse myself of any
Okay, so
direct.
in any event, I think
yeah.
it's, that's a really appropriate place for that type of use. Is within walking distance of the downtown, and I think it would also result in a redeveloped old mill structure, which is really consistent with what we've been trying to do in the downtown area. So I just wanted to mention that. That was really an interesting discussion I had with the developer.
Okay, well, I think this is a topic that we'll continue with, but if there's no further discussion on it,
I just have a question for
yes,
Diane.
Hal?
So my question is, what were the voices against ADUs in the town, additional dwelling units? What was the critique of the ADUs that you mentioned?
I'm sorry, Mikhail, the reception isn't very good here. I really didn't understand.
Okay, so what was the critique of ADUs? Why was it criticized in the town?
I'll
Why was
answer.
it decided?
Yeah, I'll answer that question. So the issue with the prior council was, and some committee members on the planning board that worked on that, was that of not permitting detached accessory dwelling units. So I think there's obviously there's a different board, there's a different council now. The thought there was, one thing to have an attached accessory dwelling unit. People felt they would be smaller, more studio style apartments, as opposed to having higher density by basically having another detached structure on the same lot. That's really what it boiled down to. They thought it would be higher density, population density, by permitting people who had sufficient land, dimensions to be able to support basically a second house on the lot. There was also the discussion, and you can get into this, between duplexes and detached accessory dwelling units. If you have a detached accessory dwelling unit, you have no further tax value or minimal on the land, as opposed to if you had, if somebody was able to do like the duplexes on that they condominiumized down on the Beach Street extension. Now you're taxing those individual units differently than you are with a single family lot with an accessory dwelling unit, because it's accessory to the use. It's not, as opposed to a duplex where that is the primary use is two separate units and you're limited. But I think we're at a different council now, and I certainly think we're at a different board makeup in regards to opinions on having them detached. Christian?
Val, I mean, do you want to have this detached ADU as a separate discussion from the maybe like a zoning redevelopment? I know at the town council level, this idea is positively received. And there's been no discussion about having restrictions on it by area. I know I personally would want detached everywhere. I don't, pushing additional housing into R1 where everyone would have to drive downtown creates the parking problem that everyone talks about. So
Right.
I wouldn't see the need to restrict it.
But I think that's just a general question to get answered first, and before we even discussed that. Okay, but yes, I mean, to answer your question, we can certainly take it up separately. It's under a zoning ordinance, so we could just modify that ordinance as we did when the state adopted new regulations. We formed a committee. Committee looked into the regulations, reported back to the board. Board had the public hearings on it, and then it went to the council. So if you want to, I'm sorry, Diane?
That was in 2017.
Okay. So,
The state law really changed that ordinance.
So yeah, we needed to be compliant with the state law. So Christian, if you want to kind of spearhead that with another member, or two, we can definitely move that forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone want to volunteer themselves?
Sure. I'll go over that with you.
Okay. Mikhail?
I'm taking a comprehensive exam in a week that takes 3 weeks, so I'm really busy right now.
You maybe in the fall.
Yeah.
All right, Christian, why don't you and Jamie run with that?
Okay. I'm sure we're not going to move fast either, Mikhail. So
Okay, any committee reports or any committees meeting? Sarah's the Conservation Commission meeting?
They had their first meeting, I think, in a couple months last week, but I was not able to attend.
Okay. Ted, are you on Capitol?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Ted if you were still interested in being on the capital improvements planning committee.
Yes, I am. Yeah. I really haven't started the ball rolling with it. So Diane, yeah, you and I need to talk. And I can reach
Okay.
out to you outside of this.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, we need to start that process fairly quickly. I think we have a very short fuse. Once again, we have to get something to the town administrator by September 1st. We do have a new municipal budgeting module that we're learning about and implementing, and perhaps we can use that to help facilitate the process so that we don't have redundancies. So I need to sit down with Steve Fournier and the finance director and try to figure out if we can unroll that program, the Munis program, so that we can use it as a tool for CIP this year. That's what my hope is anyway. But we're looking at starting up meetings, virtual meetings again, probably August 1st, which is right around the corner, as you know.
Okay.
We also need an alternate member from the planning board on that committee. Is there any interest in that from any of the board members?
Okay, Christian, you want to report on the impact fees? The committee we had?
Val, do you want to mention that one?
Sure. So there was a general discussion. Diane was involved as well, Christian, myself, and John Kuiper, with regards to the planning board taking a position on impact fee on our ordinance and whether or not the planning board would want to make a recommendation to the town council as to changes to that ordinance. I think we were all of a consensus that the water and sewer impact fees, we would, just as the board was last time around, we would rather see those replaced with system development charges that would give the town council as well as the water and sewer departments more flexibility. They wouldn't, in order to implement those and to change them, and then more importantly, how to use those funds. And then relative to the last two remaining impact fees, which would be the school and recreation, do we feel that we should still have impact fees on ordinance on the books for new development with regards to those two items or any additional items? And if that was the case, because this was last done 20 years ago, would we really be looking for the council to or the budget to include funding in order to go out and really do the analysis required to develop the need for the impact fees, and then more importantly, what those impact fees should be based upon projected capital improvements that would be coming down the pike because of growth. So that's kind of where the committee was at, was basically, if we're going to continue with the impact fee ordinance, that it really needs to be funded and brought, into 2020 as opposed to being back still at 2000. Any thoughts from any members on that? Everybody can kind of feel?
Those recommendations make sense to me.
Any other comments?
I think just that from the town council, Diane had said that she was going to take some time and be able to look into some of those numbers. That way we can go to the town council and say, hey, it's going to cost maybe $50,000 or something to look at the impact fees. And I think that might, that number might influence the idea of, well, do we get rid of them? Do we add more? Do we change them? So I think that's going to be great to get some of those numbers. And I think the committee was a great idea also.
Yeah, so Diane, you were gonna follow with Matt, right? Get a proposal or
With
just
Bruce
an
Mabry.
idea? Yeah,
Right.
Mayberry.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments? Any other committee reports? Christian?
I can just share a couple kind of the bigger things from the town council. As you all maybe have seen, the work on the McIntosh and Tucker well project is happening. So they've taken down that structure. Sewer rate increases have gone into effect. It's a little bit here and there. And then we're going to start getting 2 wards for voting. So keep an eye out for a nice map there. You can overlay it on the zoning maps.
Yeah. Hey, yeah.
Not too much, but staying busy.
Diane, any other information from planners report?
Yeah. I've been working with Donna Lane, who's a CDBG grant writer, and we have been working over the last 3 months on putting together 3 grant applications that will be submitted to the New Hampshire, hopefully, to the New Hampshire Community Development Finance Authority for projects under the Community Development Block Grant Program. And one is for continued renovations to the Newmarket Housing Authority and replacing their water line, internal water line system, and making energy conservation improvements, etc. And the other is implementation of some water improvements on New Road that we've been working on for several years. We have preliminary engineering completed, and we're hoping that we can get some community development block grant funds to the tune of about $500,000 to make that project work. We've also applied for some money through the New Hampshire Department of Environmental Services. And the third one, which is really a priority for the state under that program, I've been working with Ree Cooper from the Link Together program to develop a infant and young children childcare facility within hopefully close proximity to the Newmarket Elementary School, so that it would provide an opportunity for teachers and would help to possibly recruit new teachers to the area, because I know that there's difficulties in recruiting and retaining teachers in the school system. So those are a couple of really great projects that are intended to benefit low and moderate income persons. And, we're hopeful that we can get some money. There's a lot of money that's come down through the federal pipeline recently through the COVID-19 pandemic. And we hope that Newmarket can get some federal funding to be able to make some very worthwhile projects go forward in the town. There's a public hearing tomorrow night at the town council meeting, and we're hoping that we can move forward with the applications, which are due on July 27th.
Thank you. Any other new or old business? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Jamie, you're on.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Bill. Okay, everyone stay safe, be well. Thank you so much for participating. Have
Thank
a
you
great
very
day.
much.
All right.
Thanks, everyone.
Take
Have a
care.
good night.
Thank you.
Take care. Bye-bye.